Good afternoon YouTube, this is Will once again here to talk to you about Black Sabbath. Please remember to subscribe, like my channel, like the content, please comment on anything you want to discuss and what your thoughts and opinions about everything I'm talking about. Okay, right, and this is part 3 in my trilogy of talking about the discography of my favourite band of all time, Black Sabbath, of course, as you know from the title. In fact, I've mentioned their name twice. So part 3, we'll be going to go from the 1990s right through to 2016. Part 1 was the 1970s and part 2 is the 1980s. As you know, I'm going through all the albums in a chronological order, hence why I split them up into the different decades. The reason why we're going for 3 decades worth of content over part 3 of this video trilogy is because even though we get a nice chunk of stuff from the 1990s, we then get these odd little bits and pieces through the last decades right up to the end of it. It's not like the previous 2 decades where it was every couple of years or even every year at some points there's a new album out, and so the content builds up quite nicely. But that's fine because over that 30-year history we've still got a lot to talk about and what happened in the band around the time, and you know, still some great albums came out during this period. So let's get straight into it. So 1990, whereas the beginning of the previous decade there was going to be a big lineup change and the band didn't really know where they were going to go after Ozzy Osbourne had been exited from the band. If we get to 1990, it's still the Tony Martin period of the band. Cozy Powell is still around as well, along with of course Iommi and Jeff Nichols on keyboards. The only lineup change we get actually is the inclusion of bass player Neil Murray. And Neil Murray came in for the Headless Cross tour, and then would be another instrumentalist musician that would be in and out of the band throughout the next couple of years. Previous work had been, of course, also in Rainbow, like a few of the kind of later Black Sabbath representatives, as we'll call them, coming into the band. And I think he also did some time with Whitesnake as well, David Coverdale's post-Deep Purple band. 1990 comes around. Headless Cross has been a huge success, particularly in Europe and in the UK, not so much in America due to sort of record contracts and the way their current records company actually promoted the band in America not so well. But across Europe being very successful, the band's got a bit more steam behind them again, a lot of excitement about where they're going to be going next. In 1990, they bring us this album, Tear. What can I say about Tear? It's a different album, very much. I mean, it still falls in the vein of Headless Cross and the Eternalizer, this kind of new age of Black Sabbath that's coming around. But one thing that's very different about this, other than the kind of cool album cover over here, very green, is that this is actually a bit of a concept album. On Headless Cross, the song lyrics have been very sort of satanic-esque, and Tony Iommi, who had decided this was a bit too much, so he asked Tony Martin to maybe ease off on the satanic stuff and try a different topic. And so a lot of this album is actually based around Norse mythology, hence why it's called Tear. The tracks on here, there's some pretty good ones. I mean, Anno Mundi, the opening track, I remember it's very different. There's no real guitar solo, which was a bit of a staple of a heavy metal band even in 1990. It's very kind of Children of the Sea, kind of this kind of big kind of wash of keyboard and sound across the album. The second track, actually Lawmaker, is a great balls to wall hard rock heavy metal song. The Sabbath Stones is very good. Even the ballads on here feels good to me. It's very nice. And I had a pretty big video that was kind of going around MTV a little bit at the era. Didn't cause the band to take off like a lot of D bands who were on MTV in the 80s and the 90s, like Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and Poison and Whitesnake even. They suddenly just shot off into the stratosphere and became mega sales. But it gave them a bit more of a rotation into the American psyche with that video. What are my thoughts on the album? Well, I do like it. There's definitely a lot to go here. Now, I've actually listened to this a couple of days ago, and it actually, like Headless Cross, does actually flow quite nicely. You can definitely see this album being very similar to what Mob Rules is to Heaven and Hell. This is the Mob Rules if Headless Cross is Heaven and Hell, if that makes sense, you know, or kind of like how Volume 4 is to Masters of Reality. It's the follow-up. It's not as good, but it's still got some really good stuff to deal with. The only thing I don't really like on here is how much the keyboards are very high in the mix. They're very, very keyboard heavy album, and I wish that Iommi's guitar could come through a bit more, and it can definitely hit into the sounds of that a bit more. But nevertheless, it's actually still very good. This was actually a pretty good tour again for the Sabbath boys. They kind of went out and actually had a lot of fun. I think it's one thing that Iommi said on a few of his interviews and discographies when it comes to the tour for the Tia album. It was actually a very enjoyable time, I think, in the band, really. It'd be interesting to see how this version of Black Sabbath could have progressed a little bit further, really, had it stuck. But yeah, my personal ranking for Tia, it's I'm going to give it a good sort of 6.5 out of 10. Obviously, as you know, this is my favourite band, so it's very rare to get anything below a 5, even a 5.5 to be honest. Just because there are some forgettable tracks on here. I mean, the sort of trilogy, Battle of Tia, Odin's Court and Valhalla. The only reason why you remember them is because they kind of work as one kind of like progressive rock kind of trilogy within themselves. The song Jerusalem is a bit of a forgettable song. Heaven in Black is one I kind of skip over, to be honest. But nevertheless, though, this is a great kind of follow-up effort to one of their best albums they ever did, and so it's never going to be quite as strong, but it's still definitely worth a listen. 6.5 out of 10 I'm going to give this for Tia by Black Sabbath. As I said, the album tour that kind of went with it went really, really well. Like I said, it'd be interesting to see what would have happened had that lineup continued past Tia, in a successive sense, rather. But like everything in Black Sabbath, when we get to this period, just when you think they're getting things together, a spanner is thrown into the works. This one actually is a pretty good spanner. Geezer Butler contacts Tony Iommi after doing some work with Ozzy and says he wants to come back to the band. And Neil Murray was quite happy to step aside because he was quite chilled on being in and out of Black Sabbath. He liked being in the band, but he wasn't so committed, he felt heartbroken. So Geezer comes back into the fold. And then around that time, Geezer actually ends up going to watch Ronnie James Dio at one of his solo shows with his band Dio. And after a couple of drinks, he actually comes up and plays a couple of Sabbath songs that Dio did. I think he did Neon Nights and maybe Mob Rules even. There's talks about Ronnie James Dio coming back to the band, which he does. Tony Martin is asked to leave, so he's asked to step to one side, I should say, and he goes off and does a little bit of solo work in this sort of period. And then the Cozy Powell, on top of that, ends up having a fall off his horse and ends up breaking his leg, so it means he's out of action. Which causes then Ronnie rather to go and contact Vinny Appice. So basically, at this point, then the Mob Rules line of Black Sabbath reunites inadvertently, to kind of have another cycle, another go at it. And the album that follows that reunion is 1992's Dehumanizer. Dehumanizer is a very heavy album. Production-wise, it's really, really sadistic, very heavy, very doomy, very aggressive in its way. Not like aggressive like Sabotage, which it has elements of like a little punk and thrash thing. This is very heavy to like it just hits you in the face in a very mid-paced slow moment. It's a really good album actually. I think it's one that gets underrated quite a fair bit. Tracks on here, Computer Gods is an amazing opener. When they did the last stint with Ronnie James Dio, this was played in the set this occasion. It sounded amazing live. Time Machine would become a classic for the 90s period Black Sabbath, get played a fair bit. The song I is one that always gets picked up as well. It was one that was played a fair bit on the last stint of Ronnie. Very live, very grungy in its sense, but it's still a really cool kind of rotating kind of song. And when the group of artists came together and did a tribute to Ronnie James Dio, Jamie Juster from Hatebreed, actually with his solo band Juster, did Buried Alive. So you can see that song had a bit of an influence on the band. Overall, I'd actually give this a pretty good sort of 7 to maybe even 7.5 out of 10. It is actually a really strong album. It's an album that's aged really well as well, even if the video to track 3 TV Crimes hasn't. That's definitely with the CGI effects they're using, different sort of video of its era. But nevertheless, it's great to hear the Mob Rules line come back together again. I've always thought Ronnie James Dio and Tony Iommi's songwriting partnership was very strong. Vinny Appice is a great drummer, of course. Geezers and the bands that you can't really go wrong, can we say. Jeff Nichols is now put back to being the sort of like session musician, not an official band member for this album, but he's still on it, so adds a little bit of keyboard here and then. He goes out on tour with them quite happily, as it were. Yeah, so that's Dehumanizer, a nice little reunion for the Dio period of Black Sabbath, particularly the Mob Rules line, like I said. And like I said, they came back with a pretty strong album. The only real flaws with this is that, again, like a lot of the albums from this period, there's a few songs in here, like Sins of the Father, I was never too big on, Letters from Earth was okay. After All the Dead's the song I actually never really taken to too much. But it's a really nice album to listen to still, particularly when you want to kind of go to the heavier bits of the Black Sabbath chronology. Overall, like I said, I'll give it a 7 out of 10, really, on this one. So the only real downside, beside the song tracks that aren't as strong as well, though, is that this is obviously right in the middle of the grunge period. You know, Nevermind by Nirvana came out the year before, and the whole shift in whether heavy metal was cool or not completely changed, really. The only bands that are really surviving in the 1990s up until the new metal period later on really are groups like Rage Against the Machine, which has got a bit of a rap element in them, Metallica because of the Black Album, and Pantera just because of being so out there and yet still incredibly catchy. They just made their way into the mainstream, despite being perhaps the heaviest band ever to do so. But nevertheless, the tour actually does really well. They actually get a bit more kind of stride again back in America off the back of this, just due to, again, this is co-released by IRS and Ryan James Dio's company at the time, which is Warner Brothers. So the two of them co-release it. IRS does the European and UK market, and Warner Bros does the American market, and so it does get a fair bit of traction. And the tour, as like I said, the tour does really well off of this. And again, this could have been a really good kind of like nice new period of Black Sabbath with Ryan James Dio. Maybe could have done some more albums, who knows? But Ozzy Osbourne announced he's going to retire after the end of his No More Tears cycle, and he wants to do a couple of shows down in Los Angeles, I believe it was, where he plays on the set, and then the encore he'll bring out the original Black Sabbath members, which would have been fine. But he also then wanted the current line of Black Sabbath to be the opening act. And Ryan James Dio, for whatever reason, most likely ego reasons, decides that he does not want to be involved in as the opening act for Ozzy Osbourne. And so he leaves the band at that point. This is desperate to kind of find a singer to kind of do these shows for Ozzy. They end up bringing in Rob Halford from Judas Priest, who actually, well, at that point, Rob Halford just left Judas Priest, after being the lead singer for nearly 20 years. But he comes in, he does the few final Ozzy Osbourne shows as the opening act for the band. And even though Ozzy Osbourne goes off to one side, he enters into a phase of retirement. The whole experience was too much for Dio to want to come back after that, so he once again goes off back to his solo band, and Vinny Appice follows him as well. But Geezer is happy to stick around, Jeff Nichols is happy to stick around as well, as always, and Tony Martin was happy to come back into the band. So Iommi gets ready to do another Black Sabbath album with his new team, plus new drummer Bobby Rinaldi. Cozy Powell, for whatever reason, wasn't involved in the next project. I think it could have been still to do that. His leg was still recovering from his horse riding fall. So Bobby Rinaldi comes into the band. Again, another Rainbow drummer, indeed another member of Rainbow in the rhythm section. It's about the fourth person now between Cozy Powell, Neil Murray, Bob Dacey and Bobby Rinaldi. All of them have been in Rainbow and all of them have been playing either bass or drums in Black Sabbath at this point. Okay, so with this new lineup, they released 1994's Cross Purposes. And Cross Purposes actually is definitely one of the much weaker albums from this period of Black Sabbath. Like a lot of them, there is actually a couple of good songs here. And the opening track, Eyewitness, I think one that was played live a few times on that show. It's actually a really good song, a really good way to open up that particular album. The Hand That Rocks the Cradle was one that I kind of grabbed my attention for whatever reason. I think it was the kind of riffing, and I think Tony Iommi's guitar solo did a pretty good job for me on that one. Psychophobia was actually another one. Looking at the album listing, was one actually I did enjoy as well. But it is actually ultimately a lot of the songs here are very forgettable. They kind of phase into the background, and by the end you're kind of thinking, is this kind of done? Is this album actually now over yet? And then another track happens. Overall, I'd give them a 5 out of 10 because it shouldn't be completely dismissed, but it's not a particularly strong album by the band at this point. But nevertheless, though, it's like a lot of Black Sabbath. I think some of the singles did pretty well around this point, particularly in Europe again. Again, America's kind of once again forgotten about Black Sabbath, as it were. And so they actually go out on tour. The tour does pretty okay, and they actually do release a live album from this called Cross Purposes Live, which did feature actually a nice set list from a lot of the different eras. There's a lot of the 70s stuff, a few of the early Dio, and actually Time Machine from Dehumanizer was on that show as well. Of course, a lot of the Tony Martin period stuff, people like Headless Cross, Anno Mundi, a few of the songs from Cross Purposes as well. So that is actually a really good live CD, and it's one I've hoped to get my hands on because, like a lot of the Tony Martin stuff after The Eternal Idol, they're no longer in print. So hopefully one day they'll get round to releasing that so I can add it to my collection. And again, this actually could have been a pretty good lineup, but once again, Geezer Butler after this tour decides to go back to work with Ozzy Osbourne, who's come out retired now and is working on a new album. Bobby Rinaldi decides he wants to leave the band as well, and so Iommi then decides to bring back in Cozy Powell and Neil Murray into the rhythm section. Which is a nice welcome. Obviously, for that point then that rhythm section is done, especially Tia, with the exception of Neil Murray, then had this cross. So it was nice to kind of bring back this kind of version of the Tony Martin era Black Sabbath. Sadly though, the album they released isn't actually that particularly good. You probably all know what I'm talking about. It's 1995's Forbidden. And the only really good thing about this album is really the album cover. It's the only one of all the album covers that I think that I really like. Even though it is quite cartoonish, it's actually aged better than I think people will give it credit for, in my opinion. But the rest of the album, though, isn't particularly good. The title track, actually, Forbidden, was one I kind of got into quite early, and I think Guilty as Hell was pretty cool. But the rest of the album, though, just really wasn't strong. It was produced by Ernie C from Body Count, and Ice-T actually raps on the opening track, The Illusion of Power. And it really wasn't a recipe for success, to be honest. I think what really kind of put the final nail in the coffin of this era of Black Sabbath was that particular guest appearance, as it were. It's a shame, really, because as we know, this lineup produced Tia, and the majority of them have been involved in Hendrix Cross, which are two really good albums from this period of Black Sabbath, but sadly, this album just didn't really do too well. This is definitely arguably the weakest. I'm going to put this one at a 3.5 out of 10, just to be nice, because it's not terrible. It's not so terrible it's unlistenable to start with, and secondly, there are two good previous songs that should have credit and should be recognised at the very least. Yeah, but ultimately the production on it is pretty bad. It doesn't really fit in the world of Black Sabbath. And at this point now the band is pretty much a bit of a joke, to be honest. It doesn't really go anywhere. They do a tour for the Forbidden, but it's definitely the smallest tour they've done probably in terms of the size of the venue since the early days as well. They're going back down to doing clubs even in Europe now, maybe in a small theatre in the UK occasionally. There is a YouTube video concert of this tour as well. It was nice to see kind of like a nice broadened set list actually as well with the band, but ultimately Tony Iommi actually wrote his book, but he ended up having to fund like the last section of this tour. He actually ended it by about 2/3 of the way in, and he decided that he had enough. And that seemed like the end of Black Sabbath actually, but as anyone who follows the band will know, that we actually then move into this kind of strange kind of phase really. Because we actually, before the next Black Sabbath album, which we'll get to in a moment, obviously we get the live album Reunion, which is a live album anyway, that has a special place in my heart. This is the album that I actually listened to first from Black Sabbath, was the live version. I think that's why I like most about the band, was that live sound of the original lineup. Of course, everyone knows Reunion is the original band back together on a full-time basis for the first time since 1978. A lot of really great performances on this track album as well. The reason why I'm bringing this one up and what I'm going to talk about in a moment is because at the end of this live concert there were two brand new songs, Psycho Man and Selling My Soul. They're worth checking out. Psycho Man's actually a bit of a jam. Selling My Soul is actually kind of forgettable, kind of cool riff, but then it kind of gets kind of thrown away. Psycho Man though actually had it been on maybe these later releases, could be a better Black Sabbath song. But then this period, they're doing the Ozfest tours, and they're like 1 year it's an Ozzy Osbourne solo, the other year it's Black Sabbath. They keep going back and forth for quite a few years, including playing down at the festival in 2005 under the Ozfest kind of linear. But I guess it just wasn't meant to be, really. They did try to do an album with Rick Rubin in the early 2000s, but it just didn't really go anywhere, by all accounts. But nevertheless, in a strange topsy-turvy world, around 2005, the record company Warner Brothers wanted to release a compilation album of the Dio era, and were hoping that they could put on a couple of new songs for it, which they did. The Devil Cried, Shadow of the Wind, and Ear of the Wall. And actually, Devil Cry was a really good Dio era Black Sabbath song, kind of in the same sort of guise as Dehumanizer. Ian the Wall is a nice kind of balls to the wall heavy metal song actually as well. Dio sounds great on it, all the band sounds great on it. It's the reunion of the Mob Rules and Dehuman lineup, so Iommi, Dio, Geezer Butler, then you have to see that in the band. Jeff Nichols, around the time of the Reunion era, decided to step aside from being involved in Black Sabbath at this point as well. He's no longer around anymore. But to promote this new compilation, the new track, the Mob Raw's Dehumanizer lineup of Black Sabbath goes out on tour. It goes so well, they actually started to do a new album. And it's this one, The Devil You Know, which anyone who's a Black Sabbath fan would know is actually released under the name Heaven and Hell, which was the band name this lineup decided to use in order just to prevent any complications. People expecting to play War Pigs or Iron Man or Children of the Grave. They can just go out and just focus on the songs from the Dio period. What do I think of The Devil You Know? I think actually it's a pretty good album. I remember this album came. This is the first Black Sabbath album that, when I was a fan, that came out, as it were, and I was very excited for it. You had Bible Black, you had Turn of the Screw, Fall the Tears, Atom and Evil, Breaking to Heaven. They were all actually really good songs, to be fair to it. And it definitely deserves a good credit in the band. It's a very slow album. It's sadly Brian James Dio's final ever full album as a singer across any of the bands or artists he's been involved with. I would ultimately give this album probably a pretty good 6 out of 10. It's definitely worth a listen. It's not. I think it's definitely the weakest of the 4 Dio albums. Not because it's the newest one, but it's just the songs don't think will have the same legacy as perhaps say Heaven and Hell or Silent Seven Cross or Time Machine even. But there were some really good tracks in here actually. And again, to follow up the release of this album, they went back out on tour. Of course, it was Brian James Dio's final ever tour with the band at all, which was a shame because I was interested to see how they would follow this one up, to be fair, because it seemed like they were a full band running again, but because of all being a bit older, in a much more happier place, shall we say. But yeah, like I said, definitely worth checking out. Good sort of 6 out of 10. About a year or so after Brian James Dio died, there's once again talks of will the original lineup ever get back together again. And in 2012 we get the news that they do. And they are going to also do a new album, again with Rick Rubin. And everything seems to be all okay, but nevertheless, it's not a particularly easy period. Tony Iommi is diagnosed with cancer at this point, and then Bill Ward is ejected the band. Some people, there's one talk that it was due to his health, some people say it's due to his contract not really working out how he wanted it to. But nevertheless, the Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler pursue on with the final album by Black Sabbath, so far as we're aware, which is of course is 13. Brad Wilk from Rage Against the Machine brought in on drums for this particular album. They did a few warm-up shows in the lead up to this, including Down in 2012, which was the first time I ever got to see the band live. This album, I remember being really, again, like The Devil You Know, being really excited for this to come out. And I remember when I first heard God Is Dead and thought this is a great song, and it still is a great song. And the track Loner is a really good one as well. I listened to it a lot when it came out, but I haven't really gone back to it. I think it's just because it still is one of the strongest Black Sabbath albums. I mean, how can you, when this is the 20th album in the band to include The Devil You Know and Seventh Star, which are under different names. But nevertheless, though, this is still definitely worth checking out. I think I would give it, like The Devil You Know, a 6 out of 10, respectively. It's definitely worth a listen. But it's an album I don't really think about too much. I didn't ever particularly like Dear Father. I think Zeitgeist was a bit of a Planet Caravan rip-off. But the production on it is actually pretty good, to be fair. The band sound really happy, they're in a nice place with it all. And it's great that they released that in conjunction with Tony Iommi's cancer and all the treatment that was going on. And they did do a tour for the album as well, which I went to go see them in Birmingham back in 2013. Then after that, they decided that the band should end. And so they did their farewell tour ending in February 2016 at the Birmingham NBC or LG Arena, one or the other. But that's it then, really. That's all the Black Sabbath albums anyway. I'm actually squeezing a few of the tracks from the Reunion and the Dio Years compilation as well. So thank you for watching. I think the next group I'm going to do, I think will probably be Guns N' Roses, another band that made a big impact on me. I've got a few more discographies I can definitely go around through, also these sections of discography. I think I'm going to start trying to do now as individual albums and try and set a track for at least 10 minutes and see how we get on. Well, I think I'm maybe track by track kind of basis, very similar to what is out there on this YouTube anyway. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed all 3 parts, so you at least learned a little bit about each band. Any questions, please put them into the comments. Remember to subscribe, remember to like. Thank you.